Okay, thanks for tuning in. Alan Anand has joined me today, and this is, I think, the 13th, no, 14th lecture, and we just have two more lectures to go before we are done. So, thank you so much, Alan, for joining, and I'll just leave the stage for you. And my video and audio will be off, but I'll be here. Just if you just call up my name, I'll be there. Okay.
Okay, the only thing, oh yeah, screen share. Yeah, okay, I got it. I think I know what to do.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ashwin. Good morning to anybody who's up this early in North America, and good afternoon in Europe, and good evening in India. So for those who don't know me, just a couple of quick words. I was originally a Western astrologer. I studied with the British Faculty of Astrological Studies, and had a professional practice for many years as a Western astrologer. And then I discovered Vedic astrology when someone had gifted me a book way back when. And after some hesitation, I finally embraced it, and then studied with my teacher, Hart Defoe, for over a decade. He who had in turn been trained by his own Indian guru here in Toronto, in a classic, 15-year relationship, guru and shishya. So my education has come courtesy of Hart Defoe, really, and I, mention him in honor of the lineage that we both have arisen from. So today I'd like to talk about Viparita Raja Yoga, and so I'm going to switch to screen share and get my presentation up on board. And I think, bingo, I hope that's right. So let's dive into this. Okay, so, Parashara, Brihat Parashara, Hora Shastra, has several chapters where they talk about the movement of a lord, like the lord of the third into the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, etc., the lord of the sixth into the eighth or the 12th, and so on in these various chapters. But it's all about what we call bhava vichara, the analysis of houses. It doesn't really talk about combinations. And likewise in Paladipaka, there's similar reference to combinations of lords into other houses. But again, it doesn't really get to the Viparita Raja Yoga definition. That comes in Uttara Kalamitra by Kalidasa. And there he defines Viparita Raja Yoga. This is chapter 4, shloka 22. So basically, there are two definitions. One is that this yoga can take three different forms, where the Lord of the Sixth. So first, broad picture, a Trikashtana Lord must go to another Trikashtana. And so here are the combinations. Lord of the Sixth must go to the 8th or the 12th, or the Lord of the 8th goes to the 6th or the 12th, or Lord of the 12th goes to the 6th or the 8th. Now I realize I've got and in here, but these are the three combinations. They're not all required at the same time. It's one or the other. So the basic rule is trick Lord goes to a trick house. Alternatively, these Trikashtana lords can be related mutually, either by association or mutual aspect or exchange of houses. And they need not be then in one of these Trikashtana houses. They could be in any house. But the general rule is that they cannot be involved with any other planet but a trick lord. So, the concept is kind of like if you have two evil people, you'd like to send them out into a vacant parking lot for them to fight to the death, as opposed to having this terrible fight in a schoolyard during recess when there's risk of collateral damage. So the trick lords, they either must be confined to trikashtanas, or if they're doing combat or associated with each other, they should be in some kind of safe place where there is no other positive house lord. Now, if this is not clear immediately, it soon will be as we go through many examples. So the rules. In type A, this is when the lord of a trikashtana must go to another trikashtana, not its own. This is a key principle, and we're going to see illustrations of it. It's got to go to another trikashtana, not the one that it owns. So in other words, lord of the sixth in the sixth does not qualify. That's what it says here. A trick lord in its own house does not qualify. It's got to go elsewhere. You know, and this is the mathematical equivalent of 2 wrongs make a right. If you multiply -2 times -4, you will get +8. So it works like that. You've got to have the 2 negatives. So the trick lord has got to go to another trick house. That's type A. And again, I'm going to illustrate this with many examples. Type B is when a pair, or sometimes even a trio of trick lords, they can form sambandha, which just means a bond, a union, in any houses whatsoever. If they pair up like that, they could be in the first house, second house, 10th house, 5th house, it doesn't matter. The fact that there are 2 trick lords provides the 2 negatives, and then they could be in any house. So again, we'll see this quickly in terms of examples. So what does sambandha mean? So basically, we want to see these participating planets. They must associate only with themselves, but not with other positive or non-trick planets. Many planets own 2 signs, 2 houses. They must own one of the other negative houses, not just a positive house, or else there'll be collateral damage. However, any of these trick lords, they can associate with the Rahu-Ketu axis, and there will be no collateral damage. Why is that? That's because the nodes do not own any houses. So in and of themselves, the node, a node, does not have an association or a link to a positive house lords. They're considered house neutral in that regard because they don't own houses. Because they don't own signs, they will own no houses. Okay. Then, the other criteria is that for either of these 2 types of formations, type A, which is when trick lord goes to a trick house, or type B, 2 trick lords combined somehow, the rule is this yoga will not come to fruition if both of these planets are weak or simply ordinary. They've got to have some juice. They've got to have some essential strength in order to give the yoga its power. Now, what is strength? Avastha is a term, describing strength or weakness. So the planet must have positive avastha. And what do we mean by that? It's got to be in its own sign, or it's got to be exalted, or it's got to be retrograde, or it must have digbala, or it must occupy its own nakshatra, swan nakshatra. So long as one of them, as long as the single planet, if it's a single planet Viparita Raja Yoga, so long as it has that strength, then it will form the yoga. If there's a pair of planets, one of them must have that strength. Now, if the other one has poor avastha, combust, debilitated, graha yuddha, which means planetary war, this does not negate that yoga. It simply weakens it to some degree. The existence of the yoga is confirmed by one strong planet, and the other participant planet can, come along, and it won't destroy the yoga. It'll just weaken it in some respects. So, both positive and negative results could arise as a consequence of their combination. Okay, and if you don't know, much about avasthas and the planetary strengths and weaknesses, there's a section in Parashara on avasthas, a chapter. Likewise, in Paladipaka, there's a chapter on avasthas. and likewise in Uttara Kala Mitra as well. And in my book, Parivartana Yoga, I have an appendix on avasthas as well, too, where you get a thorough explanation of the nature of planets, or their strength or weakness according to both reasons by virtue of sign occupation or astronomical reasons, like retrogression or newer full moon in the case of the moon, and planetary war. Okay, let's look at some examples. Now I call this type X, and you'll see why in a moment. So, I've presented both the North and South Indian charts here, but let me work with the North Indian, which is what I typically do. And I like it because it's so easy to find the 6th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house. So at a glance, we see here Bruce Lee, the famous martial arts movie star, had a Scorpio ascendant. So for a Scorpio ascendant, the Lord of the 6th is Mars, the Lord of the 8th is Gemini, and the Lord of the 12th is Venus. So you look here and say, okay, Lord of the 6th, Mars, where is Mars? Mars has gone to the 12th house. Okay, but Mars is in Libra, in Rahu Nakshatra. There's no strength there. Okay, so that's not going to form yoga. We go to 8th house, ruled by Mercury. Mercury is in the 12th house, sign of Libra, nakshatra of Jupiter. So Mercury is ordinary there as well, has no strength. It will not form Viparita Raja Yoga. We look at the 12th house, Venus, ruled by Venus. Venus is there in its own sign, but as you recall in the rules presented at the outset, that doesn't count. A trick lord in its own house is not creating Viparita Raja Yoga. So in this case, none of these work. Mars, Mercury, and Venus, although they're all in the 12th house, Mars and Mercury is ordinary. Venus is in its own sign, but it doesn't qualify being in its own sign. And furthermore, they're all three associated with the moon, which is a positive house lord, the 9th lord, and they're both aspected by Jupiter and Saturn, which is, they're also positive house lords. So Jupiter, lord of 2 and 5, Saturn, well, you might say the 3rd is a mild Dhisthana, but in this case, in Viparita Raja Yoga, you're only looking at the Trikishtanas. So Saturn is positive house lord here as well. So in this case, although it seems seductively simple, where all three trick lords, Mars, Mercury, and Venus, are all in the 12th house, none of them qualify for these various reasons. And so Viparita Raja Yoga does not exist in Bruce Lee's chart. Okay, so here's a case of Albert Einstein, world famous physicist. So this is a pretty simple case, nice and clean. So Gemini rising. So you look at 6th lord is Mars, 8th lord is Saturn, 12th lord is Venus. So in this case, 6th lord Mars. Mars has gone to the 8th house. Okay, that's good. Trick lord has gone to trick house. Mars is strong. It's exalted in Capricorn. Okay, check. That's all good. It's associated with Rahu, but that's not a problem because any of these candidate planets can associate with a node and there's no collateral damage. The last thing to check is Mars aspected in any way by any positive house lord. And quick check here says no, it's not. So this is nice and clean. So Mars provides Viparita Raja Yoga in this case. If you want to look at the others, well, there's Saturn, Lord of the 8th, is here in the 10th, but you see it's associated with a whole bunch of other planets. Likewise, Venus, the Lord of the 12th, is in the 10th, associated with a whole bunch of other planets, including positive house lords. No way that is going to work. But in this case, Mars gives Viparita Raja Yoga. So Einstein moved to the USA in his Mars dasha, and received a seat in a chair in the physics department at Princeton, and after that, his future was made. Okay, so then let's have a look. So Lee Iacocca, for those who may not know him, he was the chairman of the Chrysler, CEO of Chrysler back in the 70s. So in the American car industry. So Pisces rising, the Trikashtana lords are Lord of the 6th will be Sun, Lord of the 8th will be Venus, Lord of the 12th will be Saturn. So these are our candidate planets, Sun, Venus, and Saturn. So let's see, where is the Sun? The Sun has gone to the 7th house. Okay, that doesn't appear to do it. No, it's with Mercury, but Mercury is not a trick lord, so forget about that. We go to the 8th house. The Lord of the 8th is Venus, and Venus has gone to a Trikashtana, another Trikashtana, the 6th. Okay, and Venus is Swa Nakshatra. You see, that's in the range 1320 to 2640 of a fire sign. So Venus is in its own nakshatra, and that's good. But if you look across the chart, you see that Venus is aspected by Mars. And Mars is a positive house lord of 1st and 9th. So that kills that. Venus does not provide Viparita Raja Yoga there. So then we're on to the 12th house. That's Aquarius. The Lord of Aquarius is Saturn. Saturn has gone to the 8th house. Good. Trick Lord has gone to a Trikashtana. Saturn's strength. It's in Libra. It's exalted. Okay, good. Check and check. Now, confirm. Is Saturn associated with or aspected by any positive house lord? No. So there we go. Saturn forms a perfect Viparita Raj Yoga. Early in his Saturn dasha, Lee Iacocca was, he lost his job with his previous employer. I've forgotten who it was now, Ford or Chevrolet or whatever. And he went to Chrysler. And he created the concept of the minivan after much resistance. And it turned out to be a massive bestseller for Chrysler. And after that, his fortunes were made. Okay, Stevie Wonder. Many people may know the name of Stevie Wonder. Black musician, born blind at birth, too much oxygenation when he was in the neonatal clinic. But a child prodigy. He was signed to a recording contract at age 10. He had a top 10 hit by the time he was age 13. Okay, so Virgo rising. Well, what are the trick lords? So Lord of the 6th Aquarius is Saturn. Lord of the Aries 8th is Mars. And Lord of the Leo 12th is the Sun. Let's look and see what's going on. So start with Saturn, Lord of the 6th. Saturn has gone to the 12th. Okay, that's good. And it is retrograde. That gives it the strength to create yoga. That's good. It's with Mars. Okay, that's not a problem because Mars is also with Trick Lord. But look back across the chart here. It does receive an aspect from Jupiter. And Jupiter is a positive house lord, Lord of 4 and 7. So that negates that combination right there. In fact, for both, we don't even need to look at Mars because it's ordinary, has no strength. As an 8th house lord, it's not going to generate yoga. And anyway, Jupiter kills the prospects of both Mars and Saturn as trick lords. So that's over with. So we've dispensed with Saturn and with Mars. Now we've got to look at the Sun as Lord of the 12th and see what's happened there. Well, Sun, Lord of the 12th, has gone to the 8th. Okay, Trick Lord has gone to a Trikashtana. Good. Sun is in Aries, exalted. Check. That's good. And are there any aspects upon, it's not associated with anything, are there any aspects upon the Sun? No. So that's all good as well too. So in this case, Sun forms Viparita Raja Yoga because it's a trick lord gone to a Turkishtana, and it's strong, and it suffers no collateral, it creates no collateral damage by association or aspect from any positive house lord. So at the outset of his Sun Dasha, Stevie Wonder was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, really capping off a career of some 30 or 40 years, at the top of the charts throughout many of these decades. Okay, so still working, well, okay, we were working with type A up until now. Okay, so type A was, just to repeat, when a trick lord goes to a Trikashtana, another Trikashtana, not its own, and has some strengths, and is not associated with or aspected by any positive house lord. That was type A. Now we're going to start introducing the type B, which is where the trick lords will combine, two trick lords will combine in some way, and they can combine in any house, but they must not be associated with or aspected by any other, any positive house lord. So I'm going to slow down a little bit here. I realize I've got lots more time than I might have thought. And well, I have many more examples to go through, but let's go through this carefully. So Libra, Jacqueline Kennedy-Onassis, does she need any introduction? Well, former spouse of President John F. Kennedy, Jackie O. Long considered one of the most elegant first ladies in the White House. And after Kennedy's death, and after a significant period of mourning, she was subsequently courted by Aristotle Onassis, one of the most wealthy men in the world, and later married him, a multi-billionaire. Okay, I'll talk a little bit more about her life history and its consequences a little bit later, but just by way of an overall introduction. So, Libra rising. Trick lords. So Pisces 6th, so the Lord will be Jupiter. Taurus 8th, the Lord will be Venus. Virgo 12th, the Lord is Mercury. So we start looking at this and we say, well, so our planets are Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury, our trick lords. So we look at from the 6th. Jupiter is the Lord of the 6th. Okay, it's gone to the 8th house. All right, that's good. But it's in Taurus. Does that mean anything to Jupiter? No, that's ordinary. So Jupiter will not form Viparita Raja Yoga on its own, at least not according, well, on its own according to type A definition. It will not, because it has no strength. Come to the 8th Lord, Venus rules this. Venus is in its own sign in the 8th house, but as we said in the definition of type A, the trick lord cannot be in its own sign, in its own house, in its own trick house. So that does not qualify, even though it is strong. And if we want to go to the 12th house, well, that's Mercury, and it has not gone to a Trikashtana, so it's not going to be a type A anyway. And here it's involved with the Sun, which is a 11th house Lord, so it's not a type B combination either. So then we're back to looking at Venus and Jupiter and ask ourselves, could this qualify for a type B? Now, what's the definition of type B? Two trick lords, two or more, I should say, two trick lords associated or in mutual aspect in any house whatsoever, where one of them, at least one of them, has some essential strength, own sign, exalted, swanakshatra, digbala, retrograde, and is not associated with or aspected by any positive house lord. So let's check. Venus and Jupiter, could they qualify under this type B definition? Well, yes, they are two trick lords. So Jupiter and Venus are two trick lords, and they combine together. Now, the fact that they're combining here in the eighth is immaterial, because now that we're in a type B definition, they could have combined in the first house, third house, fifth house, ninth house, you name it, anywhere would have been fine, so long as they did not make contact with another planet. So actually, they could not combine in the first. They could not combine in the, couldn't combine in the first because Moon would aspect, couldn't combine in the second because Mars would, couldn't combine in the third because they'd be associated with Saturn. Could they combine in the fourth? No, because it'd be aspected by Sun and Mercury. Could they combine in the fifth? No, aspected by Saturn and Mars. Could they combine in the sixth? No, aspected by Mars. Seventh? No, associated with Moon. Eighth, we're still considering. Could they combine in the ninth? No, Saturn would aspect. 10th? No, Sun and Mercury are there. 11th? No, Mars is there. In the 12th, no, Saturn would aspect. So, I hadn't even thought about this, but I just wanted to walk through. As it turns out, in this particular chart, there is no other house where Venus and Jupiter could combine without brushing up against some other planet on a positive house lord that would end up negating the yoga by virtue of causing collateral damage. So it just happens that in the eighth house, Venus and Jupiter are not associated with or aspected by any other planet. There's the rarity of it all. And so type B, yes, this qualifies. Jupiter and Venus, trick lords, are joined. And now, see, the rule is so long as one of them is strong, and now it doesn't matter that Venus is in its own sign, because we're not operating under type B definition. Type A definition. Type A says that a trick lord must go to another trickisthana, not its own. But we're not dealing with type A anymore. We're now with type B, when two trick lords must combine in any house without association with a positive house lord. So in this case, this is fulfilled. Venus and Jupiter, two trick lords, combine in a house, and it just happens that it's another trickisthana, but that's not the operative thing. I might have had a different chart case where we could have found another house that was clean and free of collateral damage. As it turned out, it just happened to be the eighth here. There are no other aspects on it. And one of these planets is strong, Venus. And bingo, you've got Viparita Raja Yoga. So, in Jacqueline Kennedy-Onassis' life, this whole eighth house theme of Viparita Raja Yoga, you can interpret these on a kind of a static basis, where you say, well, the two trick lords are in the eighth house, and therefore eighth house meanings and associations could be, indicative of major themes in the life of the person. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is Venus and Jupiter as being the participatory planets in the yoga will likely bring forward their consequences in their periods, major or minor. So let's first deal first with the major themes, Venus and Jupiter in the eighth house. So one of those is the partner's money. So two benefics forming yoga in the eighth house of the partner's money. So when Jackie O, well, we shouldn't call her Jackie O, she was Jacqueline Bouvier before she became married, and then married John F. Kennedy. And, in case you didn't know, the Kennedys were extremely wealthy. And so there was a huge bump there in her social status by virtue of wealth, never mind the political connections. So that was a huge factor for her. And then the other was her subsequent marriage to Aristotle Onassis was an even bigger bump in wealth, you know, from multi-millions to multi-billions. And then the eighth house is associated with trauma and tragedy. So needless to say, having your husband assassinated in the limousine seat next to you is a trauma. And subsequently, you know, the many other scandals and problems in the Kennedy family, like the subsequent assassination of Bobby Kennedy, and the other things that happened, you know, with Chappaquiddick and et cetera, with Edward Kennedy. There's lots of ups and downs and misfortunes in the Kennedy family. Okay, and then, you know, sometimes the period Jupiter-Venus or Venus-Jupiter, they may be minor things. So actually, for Jacqueline Bouvier, her coming out party, I forget now what the proper name for it is, but when a young lady is introduced into society, for her that occurred in her Venus-Jupiter period. Okay, let's go on. Here's another type B. Alanis Morissette, well, as a Canadian, you know, I know Alanis Morissette, but who was she? She was a pop star who scored hugely with an album called Jagged Little Pill back in the 90s, which was, you know, a spectacular platinum record that sold and sold for years and years. So a pop star. Cancer rising. So who are the trick lords? Well, Sagittarius 6th, that's ruled by Jupiter. Aquarius 8th is ruled by Saturn. And a Gemini 12th ruled by Mercury. So we can go through this and just see, well, you know, do we get type A's arising from this? So 6th Lord Jupiter. It does go to another Trikashtana. Okay, it's an Aquarius. Does that mean anything? Not immediately. But if we look at that degree, from 20 degrees of air until 320 of water is a Jupiter nakshatra. So actually Jupiter is in its own nakshatra. So there's the strength that we need from that. So, but Mars aspects it. So, and I realize I put in yes here, and I have to negate that. So actually I should need to correct that. Type A, I said yes, but actually I'm just realizing now that's not true. So, you know, it goes to show how careful you should be. I prepared this presentation and I thought this through, and lo and behold, look, I missed something. So trick lord, gone to a trick house, has strength in its own nakshatra, but it's aspected by Mars, which is lord of 5 and 10. And so I think that negates that. Let's go on and look at the Aquarius 8th, ruled by Saturn. Okay, Saturn has gone to the 12th. Okay, that's good. It's in Gemini. That's ordinary. And by nakshatra, that's in a Rahu nakshatra. So that doesn't do anything. So the Lord of the 8th, although it's gone to the 12th, it has no strength. Okay, so that doesn't work as far as a type A. Then we look at the 12th house. Lord of the 12th is Mercury. Yeah, and it's there, but that's its own sign, and that does not qualify it under type A. So as far as type A, we just went through the 3 possibilities, and none of them work. Okay, so just keep in mind that this line here, where I said yes, yeah, Jupiter, Swa, Nakshatra, but I should really type in here, but I don't want to lose my place in this presentation, but aspected by positive house Lord Mars, and that kills it. Okay, but then we can go to type B, and we can ask ourselves, do any of these Sun, Saturn, and Mercury combine? And yes, they do. Saturn and Mercury combines. Okay. And one of them is strong. Mercury is strong in its own sign. Okay, check around. Are there any aspects upon? No, they're not associated with anybody, but are they aspected by any other planet? Well, they are aspected by Jupiter. Does that spoil it? No, because Jupiter itself is a trick lord. So Saturn and Mercury as Lord of 8 and 12 in the 12th is fine because they're combining under type B rules. One of them is strong, Mercury, the other is ordinary, Saturn, and they're aspected only by Jupiter, which is itself a trick lord. So, you know, yes, it owns the ninth, but that's okay. The rule says that it must be aspected only by another trick lord in order to preserve this, you know, theme of negativity. So the aspect of by Jupiter is okay. Now, let's quickly look and see, could the Saturn-Mercury have been anywhere else? Well, it could not be in the first because Mars is there. It could have been in the second because then it would be aspected only by Jupiter, and because Jupiter's a trick lord, that would not be a problem. In the third, yes, it could have been in the third because no other planet aspects the third. So this pair, Saturn-Mercury, could have been in the second or in the third, could not be in the fourth because the moon is there and Venus is opposed, could not be in the fifth, not because of Rahu, but because the sun is across and would aspect it. Could it have been in the sixth? You have to remember that Saturn and Mercury, the two planets who are moving, it could have been there because no other planet would influences the sixth house. Couldn't be in the seventh because Mars would aspect. Could not be in the eighth because Mars would aspect. It could have been in the ninth. Remember, the Saturn-Mercury is the pair that we're moving, so if we move them there, nothing else aspects. Could not have been in the 10th, could not have been in the 11th, could have been in the 12th. So actually we see there's many places in Alanis Morissette's chart that the Saturn-Mercury could have been in the first, could have been in the third, could have been in the sixth, could have been in the ninth, or could have been in the 12th. So unlike Jackie O, Alanis Morissette's pair of trick lords could have moved to quite a few other houses. Anyway, so there we have Alanis Morissette's combination. And as it turns out, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury are three planets whose dashas run in sequence. The order is Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury. So an interesting thing, in Jupiter, Saturn, she was assaulted and mugged. It shook her up horribly. She had sort of like post-traumatic stress disorder for almost a year, you know, with fainting spells and crying fits and all the rest of that. But out of that trauma, 8th house, and got mugged, loss of something, she ended up writing this album, Jagged Little Pill, basically putting all her pain into words and music. And then that album was released subsequently during her Jupiter-Saturn period. And then it went on to be a multi-million seller and hit number one on the Billboard charts in her Jupiter-Mercury period. So the Jupiter-Saturn, Jupiter-Mercury period turned out to be spectacular successes for her. First in overcoming her grief, her loss, her trauma, and then turning it into something that, you know, literally made her millions. So that's a very interesting case. Then Woody Allen, you know, somebody who doesn't need too much of an introduction because, you know, he's made so many movies and, you know, he was originally a stand-up comedian at a fairly young age, making a huge salary writing jokes for other people. A lot of his jokes are about relationships. You know, he is the butt of his own jokes, and he's, you know, had very famous relationship issues and trauma, I guess we would say. I'll get into that. Well, let's talk about it briefly now. You know, he was famously paired with, gee, I've forgotten her name now, in Diane Keaton, you know, in the movie Annie Hall and in personal life. It was a major thing. And then subsequently his marriage with Mia Farrow, a long-standing affair, which turned like really ugly when he reputedly fell in love with one of their adopted children, Sun Yi, and this exploded as a a major relationship scandal, and he was subsequently accused of child abuse among others of his adopted children, and of course the whole thing with the divorce, and he was a sort of a pariah in society for quite a while, courtesy of very complicated relationships. As they say in Facebook, you're single, you're married, or it's complicated. And in his case, it really was. And he's been in therapy forever. That's another, seventh house issue, major relationships, intimate relationship, and with psychiatrist or a psychologist, a therapist, this too is a major undertaking in the development of exposing the psyche through long-standing therapy. Anyway, that's his shtick as well too, and the fuel for much of his comedy and for his the themes of his movies, always full of tortured relationships. Anyway, why do I talk about relationships? Well, you'll see very shortly. So Woody Allen is a Leo rising. And so Leo rising, then we go to the sixth house and say, that's a Capricorn sixth, the Lord will be Saturn. It's a Pisces eighth, so the Lord will be Jupiter. And it's a Cancer 12th, so the Lord will be the moon. And so there are your trick lords, Saturn, Jupiter, and Moon. So Saturn, where has it gone? Gone to the seventh. Okay, that's not a type A. Move on for a moment. Jupiter, Lord of the sixth. Where did it go? To the fourth. That's not a type A. It's involved with other planets, so even type B won't work. And then Lord of the 12th, the moon. Has it gone to another Trikishtana? No, it's gone to the seventh. So none of these trick lords, Saturn, Jupiter, or Moon, has gone to another Trikishtana. So type A is off the table. So now we're only considering the possibility for type B. And it's easy to spot when you just look at these trick lords and say Saturn, Jupiter, Moon. Are they pairing up in any way? Now, in this case, they're pairing up. Yes, Saturn and Moon are together in the seventh house. But they could have been, one of them could have been in the first house. Because when you have mutual aspect, you have another sambandha, which is just as consequential as an association. It could also occur under parivartana as well, too, but I don't think I've got any examples of that. These are the obvious ones. So Moon and Saturn are forming this. So they fulfill the first rule of, well, let's check. Do they fulfill the first rule of type B? That is that two trick lords will combine in any house without the association or aspect of any positive lord, and one of them, at least one of them, must be strong. Okay, so Moon and Saturn, Lord of 6 and 12, are certainly together in some house, the seventh. Are they associated or aspected by any other planet? No, look around, they're clean. They're all by themselves. Okay. And it's worthwhile. I like doing this now. Let's see whether any other house could it have occurred in any other house. Not in the 8th because Venus is opposite. Not in the 9th because Mars would aspect. Not in the 10th because this bundle of planets would aspect. In the 11th, Rahu Ketu axis is okay, and no other planet is aspecting. So this Moon-Saturn pair could have been in the 11th as well. Could it have been in the 12th? No, because Mars, which is a positive house lord, would be aspecting. Could it have been in the 1st? No, because Mars would have aspected. Could have been the 2nd? No, because Venus is there. The 3rd? Yes, it could have been in the 3rd. Fourth, no, because there's a bunch of planets. Fifth, yes, it could have been there. Sixth, no, because Mars is there. So as you see, we went through. The ninth house was clean. The 11th house was clean. The third house was clean, and the fifth house was clean. So there are many places where this Moon-Saturn pair could have moved and still qualified by avoiding the association with or aspect by any positive house lord. But as it turns out, here in the seventh house, in terms of strength, what's going on? Moon is ordinary, it's just halfway through its waxing cycle. But Saturn is strong. In fact, Saturn has double strength. Saturn is in Aquarius, its own sign, and Saturn has Digbala as well too. So this Saturn is very powerful to give yoga. And that's all you need, is one of those two planets have to be strong, and bingo, you've got the strength for that to occur. So there you go. And in Saturn Dasha, which for him ran from 1972 to 1991, this is where his success really took off. Annie Hall came out during that period, probably his most popular movie. And, you know, he was pretty much his own man from then on. Okay, one last example. So Lana Turner, famous movie star of the 50s or 60s, I guess, who had, you know, a very complicated life. She was discovered at age 16. She had this kind of smoldering sensuality that just sort of leaped off the screen and entranced everybody. She had a very, very messy life. She was always in and out of sexual escapades, even back then when, you know, it was not as common or popular as in current times. She was married 8 times. Her father was murdered when she was 9. Her own daughter stabbed one of Lana Turner's lovers stabbed to death, you know, in her maturity. But she, you know, she did something like 50 movies. She was considered, you know, a very serious actress, but she wasn't nominated for an Academy Award for any of her movies, but she was nominated for her role in, actually the movie Peyton Place. I was thinking it was the TV series, but it's actually the movie which was sort of created, sparked the subsequent TV series. Anyway, let's have a look at her chart. Gemini rising. So Trikishtana lords are Scorpio 6th is Mars, Capricorn 8th is Saturn, and Taurus 12th is Venus. So here are your Trik lords, Mars, Saturn, and Venus. So where's Mars? 6th lord gone to the 10th. Okay, it's not a type A. Saturn, lord of the 8th, gone to the 4th. Well, clearly not a type A. And Venus, lord of the 12th, gone to the 10th. Okay, none of these are going to do it for type A, because type A says a Trik lord has got to go to another Trikishtana. That doesn't occur in this chart. What they have done is they've all gone to positive houses. But here's the remarkable thing with Lana Turner's chart, is that they are now in full sambandha with each other, because Mars and Saturn oppose each other, and Venus is part of that mix. So Venus and Mars are together, and Venus and Mars both oppose Saturn, and so they're all in sambandha. Now, does any other planet get involved? No, Sun can't aspect Mercury, Moon, Jupiter. No, look at that. It's clean. No other planet aspects or associates with either end of this axis where these three are located. It's quite remarkable. Then if you look at what's going on among them, do they have strength? Well, Mars. Mars in Pisces, it's ordinary, but it has Digbala in the 10th. Oh, bingo. That alone would be enough right there to say this is a Viparita Raja Yoga, which is activated by the power of Mars. But let's continue. Venus in Pisces. Oh, exalted. Wow, that gives it a whole lot more juice. Then we go look at Saturn. Saturn in Virgo, ordinary by sign, but oh, it's retrograde. Oh my goodness. All 3 of these planets are dignified by one or the other, Digbala, exaltation, and retrogression. This is an amazing combination of planets that all bring their strength out with this yoga. And so it was in her Saturn Dasha that she received an Academy Award nomination. And although she didn't win it, the nomination alone was, confirmation of her role as a serious actress and her status within Hollywood. Okay, I realize I do have one more example, and I'm going to go through this real quick. Okay, Larry King, talk show host, who was on first the radio and then television and CNN, Larry King show, did like 10,000 interviews over a 35-year career. Trick lords, Taurus 6th ruled by Venus, Cancer 8th ruled by the moon, Scorpio 12th ruled by Mars. Well, let's cut to the chase. Trick lords, Venus, moon, Mars, bingo. All three of them are in the ascendant, and none of these other planets associate with or aspect them. So this is another remarkable example of a 3-planet Viparita Raja Yoga of the type B persuasion. Now, the last thing to check here is, do any of these planets have strength? Well, the moon is in Sagittarius, ordinary by sign, dark, right? Just a couple days after the new moon. That doesn't do it. Mars in Sagittarius, in a friend sign, that doesn't count. Likewise for moon. So ordinary by sign in a Ketu nakshatra, that's not going to do it. No Digbala, not going to work. Venus in Sagittarius, ordinary by sign, but ooh, look at the degree. Between 1320 and 2640 of a fire sign, that's a Venus nakshatra. Venus is Swa nakshatra. That is enough to do that. That enlivens that yoga and gives it the power to perform. So Larry King, he enjoyed his initial success in Moon Dasha, when he got his own radio talk show that was syndicated nationwide. And then subsequently started earning big bucks and started heavy sports gambling, and ended up with $350,000 in debt and had to crawl out from under that. And then in his Mars Dasha, he became syndicated on television for his talk show, and enjoyed, success all over again. The Venus thing here in this case, has played out in terms of relationships. He's been married, I've forgotten now, 7 times to 6 different women, or maybe it's 8 times to 7 different women. So his love life has been pretty amazing, or messy, however you wish to look at it. But all things considered, he's enjoyed a spectacular rise, not without, the pitfalls. He's had all these divorces. He was dead broke from gambling and had to recover from that. He had a major heart attack and open heart surgery, and, gave up smoking and wrote a book about his recovery process and came back. So a spectacular comeback case, which you often see with the Viparita Raja Yogas. They have major difficulties, but then they recover. So just to recap, type A, trick lord going to another Trikasthana, not its own, and that trick lord must be strong. Type B, 2 or more trick lords, at least one of which is strong, form sambandha in any house, so long as there is no other positive house lord. So for either type, contact with a positive house lord will negate the yoga. But for either type, contact with the nodal axis is okay. Now, okay, let me see, how can I stop sharing and go back to, okay, here we go. Okay, back to, I hope this is me back live on Facebook now in terms of you. So I'm not sure how to take questions in this instance, and
I don't know. Thank you. We don't have questions as it is. I'm just checking the So so anyway, I think it was a very good lecture because not many people have spoken about Viparita Raja Yoga and also Parivartana Yoga for that matter, because we already did a video on Parivartana Yoga for the channel. So this was actually, I mean, I think this was an higher octave uh, lecture for Viparita Raja Yoga, and final summary on type A and type B kind of clears everything. So as it is, the examples were the key, I think, and Albert Einstein example is coming up for the second time in the symposium. So,
Oh, yes.
yeah, so it was. I really liked the lecture, and I just hope it kind of finds many people, and because there is not really much work done on Viparita Raja Yoga.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure to add to the awareness. I must admit, for the many years, I labored under the incorrect assumption that simply trick lower to go into another Trikishtana was sufficient. But then, courtesy teaching under Hart Defoe, I got clear on the criteria that are required to fulfill that. And then you realize Viparita Raja Yoga is much harder to fulfill than you first thought. But once you discover it and go through the criteria and realize when it fulfills all the conditions, it really is powerful. And for that reason, it is a Raja Yoga, capable of contributing great success to the individual.
Sure. The key here is that the benefic house lords should not be in any form of connection with the trick lord, and that is the key. So I think I've heard this from one or two people, but not many people actually kind of are aware about this intricacy in predicting using the Viparita Raja Yoga. So it is not necessary that the connection of sixth or eighth lord or good dignity of sixth or eighth lord in terms of exaltation really provides higher altitude in life or something. It necessarily does not mean, because from any case there could be any form of connection with the benefic house lords. So that is the key. So sure, thank you so much. It was an amazing lecture, and thank you so much for joining.
Well, great. Thank you, Ashwin. It was a great project that you launched here, and I'm sure you're looking forward to concluding it and maybe catching up on your sleep.
Yeah, sure, of course. Thank you.
Okay, thanks again. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.